If you are a frequent viewer of the channel, you might be asking yourself, well, wait a minute, didn't he already make a video on the HRD Industries LD6? And the answer is I did. But there are things that have been updated to this, so I figured I would just make a whole nother video about what the LD6 is. And if it's your first time here, welcome. If you might remember in that first video, I measured out the LD6 to be just about 16 inches, and now it's just about 15 inches. So what has changed? Well, as I mentioned, I never had the intention to make a cap for this mast. After all, we had this cap right here, which was made of ABS as well as a rubber material. And it worked like a stopper, but it also brought up the mast about an inch. It's more low profile, which means we have a shorter overall mast length. And this will fit into things like the Gigaparts backpack, the Tactical Explorer backpack. And so when I first made that video, I also talked about how, yes, I'm going to go ahead and include this cap, but I'm not going to include 550 cord, which I've started to include 550 cord. And the reason for it is, to be honest, when you're burning 550 cord, it could result in burns that are very painful. Instead of you having burns, I just figured I would just add the 550 cord to each cap. As you'll notice, there is a section in the middle with the cap for your top section of the mast. But when fully extended, this is just about 19 feet 3 inches. Whoa, stop shaking. Hey, I did mention too that this was a community effort for the cap. One of the things I wanted to mention is I designed the cap, and KC3WOA really helped me do better with the cap. And what I mean by that is he added a taper on 2 parts of this cap, which allow you to be able to easily, and all you have to do is apply gentle pressure, put on the mast cap. And I say gentle pressure because we don't want to put any amount of force or too much force directly in any part of this 4.5 millimeter top section. That could create unnecessary stress and break the mast section. But also, one of the things I mentioned in the first episode was, hey, if you close this cap, you could pull on this 550 cord and you'll have your mast section come right out. But the problem with that is if it's tight and it's in there and you're having a hard time and all of a sudden you pull too hard, and then because it's a taper effect, you should be able to set different depths, if you will, of where this cap sits on the mast. And if you don't want to use this, that's fine. You still got this right here. All you got to do is take this out and put the cap in. But people were asking for some sort of antenna mount or wire mount, if you will. And again, I want to reiterate that this is for wire antennas. I might have seen a few people out there putting things like Moxons and Yagis on their LD6, which is not the intention for this mast. Now, you probably are wondering about the weight. We talked about the length. The top section is 4.5 millimeters in diameter. The bottom section it's right about 36 millimeters in diameter. And it weighs 1 pound, 0.72 ounces, or 473.5 grams. In total, there's 20 sections on the mast. I already mentioned the 4.5 millimeter top, and I'm just going to start kind of putting things back into place here. And I'm just starting with the largest, and then the second largest, and then the third largest, keeping in mind that I have the threaded side here, and the rough side is going to be facing or closest to that threaded side when we're putting these back in, just in case you ever wanted to disassemble this for cleaning or so forth. When you have all these 20 sections, in prior videos about different masts, I've shown that you could kind of flick this out like you would a fishing pole. And that's absolutely wrong. You do not want to listen to that advice, because what will end up happening is you're going to put strains on the different sections and where they meet up, since this is friction fit. And too much pressure and too much pulling out is going to make it difficult to collapse again. But also, it adds the potential that carbon fiber will crack along these seams. Because of the tapered end on the top section, it's not going to fit through the bottom section easily, at least. And when it does, it usually will cause damage. Instead, what I recommend doing is holding the mast like you see here. You notice my hand has the larger section of the mast in here, and then I have a little bit of finger support on the smallest section of the mast, and all I'm doing is pulling out, and the friction fit barely occurs, but it's fine enough for a wire antenna, and I just continue to do that as I extend it all the way out. Now, I'm going to go the opposite way when it's time to collapse the mast, and I mean that by saying I'm going to collapse the lower section and the one above it and the one above it and the one above it, because a lot of times I'll see people do this, and although it might work, you do risk breaking your mast sections, which you don't want to do. Just one other thing I could think about before the battery dies here, and it's the overall width of the mast from the inner to the outer part, and you're looking at just about, it's about 0.75 millimeters. Now there are a couple other things I want to mention, and number one, carbon fiber is conductive. What that means is two things. Number one, be very careful around overhead power lines and so forth, because your safety is vital, and at the end of the day, you want to go home. Let me just fix that. But also, number two, because it's conductive, there might be interaction if the antenna wire is running parallel to the actual mast when it's in the air. And therefore, it's always nice to make sure that you get your carbon fiber mast and your antenna wire separated as much as possible. I like the sloper configuration, and it seems to work pretty fine. But I did want to point those out. Now I get a lot of emails recently about when is the LD6 going to be back in stock, and it's a great question. We sold out of the first 100 pretty quick. There's 300 more en route, which should be here around November of 2024, at least the end of November 2024. I'm not exactly sure, and I'm not going to do pre-orders, but what I was going to say is you can go over to Etsy and you can actually click on Be Notified when this item is back in stock, and you'll be notified when the item is back in stock. So anyway, this is the LD6. Again, I implore you to go check out that first video, which I'll link below, although the information in this video is a lot more current, and hopefully it helps everybody make a more informed decision of whether this portable carbon fiber mast is right for you over other ones. The price of the LD6 at the time of recording is $66 US plus shipping and tax. Thanks for watching the channel, everybody. I hope you have a good one.